Hello again YouTube, I am back and I wanted to do something a little bit different for this video. I kept realising I kept doing the same type of stuff over and over again when it came to videos or reactions or whatnot. But I wanted to do something a little bit different, something I wanted to do for a very long time. As I mentioned in my last video that I was going to probably touch on doing this subject, especially with new-ish type of bands, either underground or still quite recognisable, memorable in the goth genre, but which are more towards the past 10 years or so. So with this one I wanted to kick this off with a band which I love in particular, and I don't think many people would know this band or remember this band unless your music is very distinctive, especially throughout 2010 or 2011. And this is the band Dommin with their album Love Is Gone. Now the reason why I wanted to cover this one is because I think that Dommin is a very underrated band in that aspect. But let me just quickly give you like the back story of who they are. Dommin is a band that's formed back in California back in 2000, and their current lineup to date is Christopher Dommin, Cameron Morris, Billy James and Constantine. The reason why I wanted to necessarily cover Love Is Gone is not only was its first, well, debate whether it's their first proper album or their second album, depends on how long you wanted to follow the band, and if we're going to include the Mend Your Misery EP, which they ended up bringing a few of their songs from that EP into this album. The album itself, Love Is Gone, was released back in 2010, the production started in 2009, and in the UK it was released on the 15th of February, just after Valentine's Day, and in the US it was released on the 2nd. Now the reason why I wanted to cover this album in particular is it's such a very underrated album, but it's got such a beautiful dark concept. I've seen this band perform with him back in March time, and I saw them perform in Lunar Coil in February of 2010, both dates. The one thing with Dommin is, when they came out, especially with the single My Heart Your Hands, which is on this album, they got a fair bit of recognition through the music industry. I mean, they were signed to Roadrunner at one point, and due to that they had Kerrang! Introductions on magazines, they were in magazines, they were on Scuzz and these other music channels. They even played Download Festival, I'm pretty sure the same year or the year after. And it's not a case of like they were washed up or anything, or people didn't know who they were there, but kind of a bit under the radar, as I said, if you remember collectively the music. So people do remember them because they were featured quite heavily and their faces were plastered all over these music channels and music magazines. And because they were so niche in their genre, I can understand why a lot of people don't tend to remember them. It's a little bit of a shame that Dommin kind of flew off the radar, because shortly after, I can't remember if Roadrunner were about to close or something like that. I know they're still up and running, but I think there was something about Roadrunner eventually stopping, and then either they left because of that or they left for other reasons. They're still active, but they haven't got the same recognition and platform as they once did, which is a shame, because a lot of their music is more or less the same type of concept about grieving and distress of being in romance and everything like that. And this is where I wanted to address the album on what it basically stands for. I've always described Dommin as the anti-hymn, as him would sing about how love is great and how we desire an urge to be loved. Dommin, especially on the Love Is Gone album, is very much how love has destroyed you, love has more or less put you in this melancholic state. But let's start from the beginning. Let's start with their single My Heart Your Hands, which is the first opening track. When you get into a band, whether you watch it on YouTube or any type of social media platform or even the television, it's always the first impression. And what I necessarily liked about My Heart Your Hands was the fact it had that gothic-y twang to it, and they still had the type of modern production to it. So it wasn't just a straight up goth rock song or a typical 90s influenced goth soundtrack. Bear in mind that Dommin was very much influenced by Human Type O Negative as well as other acts like that. They kept it to their own sound. They had some beautiful use of the guitar, which was, you can hear it's more or less quite modernly based. When you hear My Heart Your Hands, the first thing you hear is that beautiful chime bell sound from the keyboard, and then introduces you into church bells and then the drop beat tuning of My Heart Your Hands. A very simplistic chord structure, and then out of nowhere you hear Christopher Dommin's voice. This brooding, almost Peter Steele-ish type of influence, and in a way you also have like a type of swing nuance to his voice. You can hear that there's a slight little bit of a Frank Sinatra element to how he sings and the way he sings it. The single itself is a very strong beginning to the album. I think that, especially with the way how the verse is structured up to the chorus, it's very much catchy, it's in your face, and with the whole structure of it, the way how it's beautifully blended through the verse and the chorus, through the use of the piano, and the way how the bass and the drums kind of blend it all in. It's very hard to find like a structure for when certain verses, certain choruses can easily blend back into the song. And what I necessarily like about the chorus itself is it's very simplistic. It's very much in your face. It's talking about the concept of being in love with someone who doesn't necessarily love you back, but they more or less have your heart in your hands. The fact that this person has deceived, don't know if you can trust them, and just that angst, this anguish of betrayal and hatred and hurt. And that's what I like about it, and especially when it comes up to the verse, when it starts building up, you can hear more of the instruments, especially with the keyboards, and it's just a beautiful combination of the way how his emotions work with the song. And I think this is why it projected the meaning of the song straight ahead. It very much had that beautiful combination of Gothic elements as well as modern like rock slash like doom metal influence, I guess you can say, talking from the guitar aspect, and just that overall creepiness that the 90s goth sound brought with them into this music. We go into the second song, New, and I love this song. I mean, when I first saw them, they opened up this song, and it's just a very interesting way how they introduced themselves. It has this nice, almost suspension. It builds up. You hear the drums kicking in, like dun dun, dun dun. You hear like little sound effects creaking in, and then once again, the keyboard kicks in. And what I love about Dommin is their use of keyboards, how they just use it to amplify and express the whole song, whilst the guitars and everything like that is more or less the backing track, which still has that groovy-ish type of rock theme to it, but it's more on a melancholic usage. And once again, in Christopher Dommin's vocal range, he ends up using his vocal abilities to more of a swingish type of effect, especially when he sings the verses. And overall, this one has more of like a rocky-ish type of vibe with the guitar, and I like the way how they introduce that into the song, which then ends up becoming a staple for other songs through this list. But then this is where it gets a little bit different, because Dommin, throughout this album, they like to leave little instrumentals, very short instrumentals, probably about a minute and a half, maybe even less. And with this one, Even Fall Hollow, it's a beautiful, it's a very short clip. I think it's less than under a minute, and it's just the way how it builds up this nice, beautiful instrumental with the keyboards especially, and it's a beautiful way to blend straight into their second single, which was Tonight. Very much more major in that aspect, very much more upbeat, I guess you can say, but the lyrical content is still quite melancholic, and that's what I tend to like about Tonight. Not many people would tend to like this because it's a little bit more happy, I guess you can say, as far as the sound goes, and this is very much more like the hymnish type of influence, especially what you can hear through the Screamworks era of him. And what I like about this album is not just the anguish and like hurt from one person's perception, like Christopher Dommin, for example. He's also seeing how love can affect the people who are around him, so in this case might be his loved one or his family or something like that. So it's not just a one-dimensional, oh my god, love is shit type of thing. He uses it to his extent, the possibility that love can hurt even the people he is closest to. And he uses that in the album on certain songs. At first, with Tonight, I thought that it was a little bit random off the album, because it was so major, especially through the first couple of songs we heard, which was quite dark and brooding. Then we had this type of like upbeat, type of swingish, almost type of sound, and then we introduced into Tonight, which is a lot more major. But as a single, it works very well. And I know not many people tend to agree on this one, but if you listen to the concept of that, And this is where we're going back into the 5 stages of grief, especially when all of a sudden, like, you know, when we had that situation where before we've been with someone for such a long time and then out the band, all of a sudden they don't want to be with you, or all of a sudden depression kind of kicks in, and that idea of being alone is just overall consuming and you don't know what to do. And that's where we're introduced into the self-titled song Love Is Gone. It's a very hard-hitting, slow song. The tempo is a lot slower, the keyboard sounds a lot more menacing, it's quite choir-esque. Even the way how Christopher Dommin sings this, it's a very much, it's a painful song in a way, because he's talking about how he knows that this thing that's been going on, it's been going for far too long, and he knows that with love it takes 2 players to play the game, so it's not just a one-dimensional feeling. Everyone's got to feel on the same level for love to work. And the way how he sings this, it sounds like he's been through a very awful breakup, as we've all been, and through my many experiences with shitty relationships. It's always that notion that, especially when you feel trapped in a relationship and you don't necessarily know how to deal with it, if you did something wrong or what must have happened, and then you have that notion that, yeah, love is crap, love is gone, I don't believe in love, as many other artists have talked about them not being in love due to that anger of the 5 stages of grief, where it doesn't exist, it can't exist. And it's just a beautiful constructed song. It's very slow in the structure of the music as far as tempo goes, but overall the guitars and the bass and even the drums just help bring this dark, brooding projection of emotion into the self-titled song. And out of the blue, Dommin threw this beautiful little piece called Dark Holiday, which is very cabaret-ish, and this is what I like about Dommin. They mix different type of elements of the Gothic subgenre. So dark cabaret, as you know, it's very much piano based, and with this piano intro, it's very easy to distinguish as dark cabaret. And once again, Christopher Dommin brings his like almost elvishy Danzig type of swing to this. The way how he sings it, it's almost upbeating, where even the melody he uses in his voice, do 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 do, and we get that type of nostalgic feel to it. And that's one thing I like about Dark Holiday, especially through the verses. It's a very nice nostalgic trip to it, but as soon as the chorus comes in, it's all of a sudden type of shouting and almost projecting this type of emotion that, yeah, it may seem all jittery and good, but in the end, the trip is nothing to be proud of. It is a dark holiday. And even the use of the guitars, how it just becomes so aggressive, it just has a very dark and discomforting atmosphere, and that's what I tend to like about it. But it's so tongue-in-cheek, which I think is a nice little play that Dommin did on this one, still keeping that dark element of the song in fruition. And then straight afterwards we have a beautiful, underrated song in a way, which was Without End. It starts off with a very distinguished guitar riff. I won't say fast, but it's more on a higher tempo than what the other songs would be. The drums keep on the melody, have this type of fast pace coming in. The keyboard ends up doing its almost little part of the song. And then what I love about this song in particular is the way how Christopher Dommin uses metaphors and the use of lyrics. How it's almost like a stalkish type of song, which is a bit weird in context, but even just the beginning verse, I am the stranger staring, and I know what you're wearing, may I undress you with my eyes. It's almost that need to have someone, that one of those weird songs, that weird type of concepts of how dangerous love can actually go, and just that desire of wanting someone and more or less telling them to give in to their insecurities and expose themselves for what they want. Then it starts building up again after the bridge, where it slows down, you have a whisper-esque type of feel to it, which kind of gives you a discomforting situation to feel in, and then it kind of builds up again, where the guitars and the drums and the bass just overall take it before going straight back into the last chorus. And even the way how the song ends, it's slow. They more or less extrapolate certain bits from it, so the vocals go, and then the drums go, and then just left with this beautiful ending on the piano. And I love it because it's such a mixture of tempo and emotion. How we have bargaining, then we have anger, then we have almost like a comforting notion, and then it just goes chaotic again, and then we just feel his release of emotion, that he accepts that it's probably never going to happen. After that, we're introduced to another small little instrumental, which is called Within Reach. It's very much... how can I describe this? It's such a short instrumental to describe, but it's brooding, to say the least. Once again, this one has got mainly to do with the keyboards again. It's very keyboard orientated. I feel not any guitars in it. I think there's a little bit of the drums into keeping like a certain beat, or might be hand clapping, but I think this replicates like a heartbeat type of sound. And then it goes into their third single, which is Closure. And they did a video for this, which had loads of like fans bring up like their signs saying how they felt, or if they felt worthless, or how love has affected them badly. And it cuts through like a performance video where they're playing the song, and then it goes straight into narratives where you got the fans holding up the signs. And what I like about this song, it's one of the first that I think with the guitar it kind of shines out a little bit more. It's introduced with a nice picking style guitar, and then it kind of kicks into a distortion with a very recognisable heavy riff, if you ask me, especially for something that is supposed to be quite mellow and slow as far as like Gothic influence type of songs go. The verse is more stripped down, how it's just Christopher Dommin's vocals with a tiny little bit of keyboards in the first half of the verse, and then the drums kind of build it back up, and then through the chorus Dommin just belts out this beautiful line, "This is closure," and you can hear with Christopher Dommin's signature type of angstish type of vocals that it's painful, it's projective, it more or less gets to you, and it's something that we relate. We want closure from love. We've had this beautiful memory, we've all been in relationships where it lasts long and it's been beautiful, but then afterwards, when it's gone, you don't have to cope with it. You want a closure, you want to know why it ended, you want to know what's the reason for us feeling like this. As far as singles go, I wouldn't say it's the most popular one, but I think it's the one which has the most meaning to as far as the fan base goes. Now we're going to get to one of my favourite songs on the album, which is Making the Most, and I think this one has a nice 80s type of ballad-ish type of sound to it, where it's introduced with a beautiful piano introduction. It's quite slow, it plays in major as well, which is equally as melancholic, because when you use major keys in a minor song, especially the way how it's composed, it can really tug on emotions. When the whole instrumentation kicks in, when instruments kick in, it's slow, it's not building up per se, it's keeping that tempo, it's keeping the overall theme of the song, which is sadness. And just the lyrics how Christopher Dommin uses, these are ones which I kind of could relate to a lot more, especially through relationships in the past which didn't tend to necessarily work, or being promised false hope, like it's going to be all good, it's going to be forever, yada yada yada. But one thing I like, especially the first verse, and this is what kind of got me, goes, "You're going to tell me how great it's going to be, but little did you know you can't be with me." It's something like that we all kind of tell ourselves that that's not how we feel. That we feel like we can cope with love, but in the end we have our insecurities and we're afraid to be read. We don't want to necessarily open up with. But what I necessarily like, especially with the transition for a very short pre-chorus into the chorus where he goes, "I'm holding you close but you're pushing away, so I'm making the most of this misery because I can't take it anymore." It's that sense of denial again in this album where we all feel like this, that we want to relive these memories, we project and look at these relationships which might have been great or not, but we focus more on the memories, the good memories we have in particular, which makes it harder for us to let go. And in this context, he wants to keep these memories close to him, he wants this relationship to work, but she's pushing away, saying it's never going to work. So he's making the most of this denial, has this nostalgic relapse of his time with this person. And he realizes that even though he tries, it just will not work. And it's a very beautifully constructed song, and this is why it's one of my favourite songs on the album. Then we're going into the next song, One Feeling. And with One Feeling, what I like about this, once again, it balances and crosses between not just staying melancholic. Like, if you listen to this album, it's not just a simple straight edge melancholic album. It's not just slow tempoed or like dark and dooming in the process. It has very good elements of that, but with One Feeling, it brings down this type of gothic-y rock type of sound, and as I said, it brings in more like a metal-ish type of structure. And once again, the guitars are overpowering at the beginning, and then when you hear Dommin's type of signature keyboard sounds. In this song, what I like about, especially when he goes, people think everybody's against you, but not me, I've got nothing to lose. It's that acceptance. He's just bargained with the idea of losing love from making the most, and now he's kind of accepting that, whatever, he's got one feeling, and it's not a case of loving anyone, and the usage of this type of rock-ish type of sound to it, middle of the road rock, is the fact that it can relate to not just the younger demographic audience, but can also relate to the older demographic audience. But then, straight after that, once again, it's like his denial and anger kicks back in, because you have the song I'm Still Lost. It almost has like a tedious and tenacious beginning to it. It has this verse that kind of creeps in, especially with the way how the keyboards kind of project the entire scene. You have this minor type beginning, this minor key beginning. You have Christopher Dommin almost like telling him a story to us about how this relationship was, how it first started, and how great it was, and then all these promises that were told, and the way after this relationship broke up, that he's still guessing who he is, but regardless, he's still lost, and he's angry about it. He's in pain. No matter what he does, he cannot find himself where he is. Can't find where he is psychologically or even mentally. He's just angry about everything, and you can hear this through the chorus, how it's so sardonic. You can hear how fed up he is about him trying to find his own identity again, about him trying to pick up his own piece and find out who he is again after this this carnage of a relationship. And then we're introduced to a very short type of instrumental again, the final one, which is One Eye Open. Very much just to fill in the transition between I'm Still Lost to the next song, which is Honestly. And it's almost like a leading instrumentation, kind of like with the one for Tonight, where it kind of, after the anger from I'm Still Lost, it kind of calms down and it kind of projects into realising that it's not necessarily all that bad, and then we kick into Honestly, which is beautifully constructed, because you have, one thing I noticed with the song is the drums. It's a simple bass drum kick, bump, 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 which I think is masked with the way how the keyboard sound is used in the song. It's kind of uplifting, and it gives you the sense of adrenaline pumping back in, and I find there's no anger in this song, there's no shouting, there's no angst into this. It's more or less the acceptance, the final acceptance song. And he basically talks about how he's just so in disbelief at how these things he had for someone, how he could necessarily be important to someone. And even when he goes, honestly, I never thought I would lose myself so deep inside you. It's that realisation that he must have found love again, and realising that falling in love is a turmoil of a process, and how he didn't realise how he can be with someone again, and this realisation, but at the same time it's hurting him. Even through the bridge where it kind of slows down a bit, only just for a couple of bars, and he kind of starts whispering, honestly, honestly, you're killing me, before going back in. And we're kind of left listening to this thinking that he's struggling with the process of being irrelevant to someone. And then the last song of this album, which I explained back in my love song video, and what I love about this, through this journey of All Hope Is Gone, through the story of how he's been hurt, he's trying to keep that denial, still go on, he's trying to be tedious and replace it with like lust and this kind of desire about wanting someone while still being in denial about loving this person, because the way how it's still hurting him. And when he realises he's alone, he hates it, he doesn't like the idea that he does not know who he is. And throughout the ending, where it's Honestly, the song Honestly, it's just, once again, soft spot for pianos. Beautiful piano beginning. Christopher Dommin kind of gently tells how he feels, and it's not in any melancholic or pessimistic viewpoint. He's talking about how he feels relieved that after accepting that love was gone, he found it again. And even with the chimes of the church bells, and how he gently sings about how it feels like to be in love again, he's asking the person in context, do you remember what it feels like to fall in love? And then towards the end he says that he does, since he saw this person. So what I love about this album is, overall the concept of this album I find is, regardless of love is a very dark process, it's a very dangerous game to play, and when you are hurt you will go through these awful phases throughout your breakup. You will be in denial, you will have like a cardinal lust and just not give a shit. When you realise that even when you go through the worst times and accepting your loneliness, you will be found. And that's what I love about this album. And I actually wanted a second opinion on this album, and I asked my good friend Dr. Sanders from Gothcast to give me his viewpoints. I know that he normally tends to do more towards the 80s and 90s and even 70s, but I wanted his personal viewpoint on this album because I thought that he might give us a go. So, I'll catch you all in a moment, my dears, and thank you, Dr. Sanders.
Welcome to Gothcast. Wait a second, this isn't Gothcast. I mean, this is where I usually film Gothcast, but this is Sweeney DeVille's review. What am I doing here? Well, Sweeney asked me to make an appearance and kind of give my thoughts on Love Is Gone by Dommin, and here I am to tell you about Love Is Gone by Dr. Domination. You know, initially I was hesitant to cover this album because if you watch my channel, then you're probably familiar with the fact that I usually cover things from the 80s and some things from the 90s, but I haven't really covered too much of the 2000s, and it was something I just wasn't familiar with. You know, I never heard of this album, and Love Is Gone seemed like something that it might not be to my taste, but of course, just like anything, you never know until you try it. And sure enough, after I gave it a few listens, I actually genuinely liked quite a bit of the material on here. I won't lie, the first time I heard the song My Heart, Your Hands, I just thought it was a little bit generic sounding for me. You know, that kind of heavy rock guitar sound of the, you know, time from like 2005 to like 2012. And so I had to really kind of take that headspace out and go, okay, well, I'm gonna give this album a shot. And there is some really cool stuff. Probably the things I like the least on this album are My Heart, Your Hands, and Tonight. I just felt like those were a little too like single-y, a little bit too generic-y, anthem-y. In fact, you know, that's kind of my biggest criticism is those particular songs. And don't get me wrong, I like the style, I like the way in which it's presented, but I thought some of the material on here was really awesome. In fact, one of the main reasons Sweeney wanted me to review this album is that it gave him some Typo Negative vibes. And I can see it. In fact, the band did do a cover of Love You to Death, which is an amazing song by Typo Negative, and they covered My Girlfriend's Girlfriend in a more straightforward, rock-oriented way. And they're genuinely good covers. I think they're actually really awesome. One of my favorites from this album actually is the song New, which you know, even though it has a kind of standard formula in terms of the structure of it, really good, catchy song. And across the whole album, especially on this song, you'll hear this really cool blending of the keyboards in with everything. In fact, one of the best things about this album, I think, is the way the band blends these elements together. You know, the guitar, bass, drum, you know, kind of rock vocal sound with the keyboard, which I think they do it really well. And they use it to enhance the mood of the songs. There are a few songs that have kind of a dominating keyboard or piano sound, and those are seriously some of my favorites. I think that that's what they really did well here. And I think saying that the music is somewhat reminiscent of the time, you know, of what was not necessarily mainstream, but what was popular in alternative culture at the time, you know, the way the guitar sounds, the way it's mixed, it really does have that sort of sound where I can pinpoint what sort of year or era it was made. I really wasn't surprised to learn the band had supported, you know, Wednesday 13, Laguna Coil, you know, like all these artists that were very popular, you know, like the Birthday Massacre. And those are great bands in their own way, and I know those bands have a lot of fans, but I know that in the modern internet goth era, a lot of people have some criticisms against that era of music. But I just tend to focus on If the music is good, if it contains the elements I like, and if it's something I enjoy personally. And there are some things I didn't enjoy in this album, like I said earlier, but the songs I did enjoy, I really enjoyed. Like the song Dark Holiday, which is kind of like a dark cabaret sort of song, is really, really good. The album does have its own set of kind of like power ballads and just straight up ballads, which are pretty good. I mean, this is a long album. You got 15 songs, although some of the songs are just kind of shorter, like less than 2-minute interludes, which I think work for what they were trying to go for. I mean, this album clocks in at around, almost an hour. It's around 52 minutes long. I think a perfect example of what I like is the song Love Is Gone. It sounds a lot like Danzig. The singer sounds a lot like Danzig, and he has a lot of power in his vocals. Sometimes the effects and the use of layering and stuff to get like a big sound, maybe a little overdone for my taste, but this album really does achieve what I think it sets out to do. Is this album the lost, hidden best album of goth from that time, of 2010? Maybe not, but I think it has a lot of elements that goths will enjoy. Just like all albums from goths in the 80s and 90s, they're taking older elements and then blending it with new to create a sound all its own that relates and is interesting to people who are into very dark and very, the spookier and more macabre side of life. And I think this album does do that. But will it be to everyone's taste? Maybe not. I think it does do what it tries to do very well. And I'd recommend you take a listen for yourself, because that's the only way you're going to really know if you actually enjoy it. Well, anyway, thank you, Sweeney, for having me make a little guest spot on your show. And yeah, everyone out there, make sure you stay spooky and all that stuff. And blah, 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 blah. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders, for your lovely, lovely, lovely review. And once again, please check out Dr. Sanders' YouTube channel, Gothcast. I'll link it right below. Once again, very, very, very well thought out videos, very educational, I find, and his usage of describing or even projecting his videos, I think, is absolutely brilliant. So please do check out Dr. Sanders on Gothcast if you haven't already. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me ramble about this album. If you want me to review any of them, please let me know. Drop the link below, or even like Bandcamp suggestions from underground goth bands that you most probably like, especially ones which are past 2000. So just something a little bit more for me to listen to and get back to you on that one. So thank you very much once again. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you all very soon. Goodbye, everyone.